Well, I write books about the strange and supernatural, and the paranormal and the peculiar, magical and the mysterious, bizarre and, quite frankly, the just plain bonkers. I'm interested in what you might call traces of supernatural belief, both in sort of historical terms and in contemporary society. So the typical topics that I cover include things like historical witchcraft, folk magic, folklore, but also contemporary urban legends as well, and also areas such as cryptozoology, which is the sort of study of animals that are either in the wrong place or animals that we, unknown to science. And then there's sort of the broader area of what you might call paranormal interest, things like UFOs and strange things in the sky, and basically anything that I fancy that's just odd and unusual. Well, I've been interested in sort of unusual and supernatural topics for as long as I can remember. My parents often said that I was a morbid child, but I have a very clear memory at Christmas when I was 7 years old, being given a big picture book on dinosaurs, and I loved dinosaurs like many kids of that age. I knew all their names and I had my favourites. That interest in dinosaurs led me to dragons, which dinosaurs were at the time the coolest things on the planet, but dragons were even better because they flew, they could breathe fire, they were smart, and being interested in dragons, that opened up this entire realm of mythology and legend and folklore. And from there I went into sort of science fiction and fantasy fiction and horror fiction. So by the time I was 11, by the time I'd gone to secondary school, I'd already read Dracula and Frankenstein in the originals. Now the Frankenstein, most of it passed me by because it's mostly a philosophical novel, and as for Dracula, the sexual subtext, I just didn't get that at all. That obviously learned that later, but so that was the kind of thing that I was interested in. And so then during my teenage years, like I suspect the biography of many writers, I was just reading. I just read sort of everything that I could. And then a really interesting thing happened when I think it was probably something like 19, something like that. I'd been following the punk rock group, the Ramones, around the country, and hitching from gig to gig, sleeping in bus shelters under motorway bridges, that sort of thing. And after a week, my money and my energy ran out, so I hitched home. I was coming down the M5, and a middle-aged couple gave me a ride. And the man seemed to know about everything. He just seemed to he knew about literature and philosophy and history and crime, and he knew an awful lot about the supernatural. And after a while, listening to him, I said, who are you? And he said, oh, my name's Colin Wilson. And at the time, I didn't know this, but he's actually one of the major 20th century British 20th century British writers in the sort of the supernatural and paranormal. He's written something like 70 books. He's a sort of polymath, and he was so fascinating that I went over 100 miles out of my way to stay in the car to make sure I could continue listening to him. So when I eventually said, look, I have to get out now because I do have to get home, I was I had to hitch back another extra 100 miles. But that was there was a catalyst, because I went back and I dug out his books, and I've still got the ones that I bought then, and they were a great influence there. And I just maintained that interest into sort of adult life, as the usual things happen. You get a job, you have get married and all these sort of things. But even when that was happening in the background, I was always interested in just this sort of unusual and extreme stuff.